Angiosperms. This is another division of the flowering plants. And they're the biggest group of land plants on Earth. Their reproductive structures, of course, are flowers. They've got seeds that are enclosed in a fruit, and they've got well-developed transport system. Another subdivision is the angiosperms. Now, they are monocots, and they are a huge group of really big importance because they feed the world with cereal. And it's a big diet of many populations around the world. So are the grasses that feed herbivores, which may supply many cultures with meat and also milk. So these are grasses, and they're feeding lots and lots of people and animals around the world. There's a few characteristics of these. The embryo has got a single seed leaf. That's where it comes from. The seed leaf is called the cotyledon. The leaves are generally very long and thin. The stem contains these vascular bundles. This is for transport. They're generally quite small, and they're often pollinated with the wind. You can see these is likely to be able to blow a long distance in the wind. We've covered a lot, so now we can just go over a few key terms here. Xylem, that's the dead transport tissue moving water and minerals. So when I referred to the vascular bundles before, that contains xylem and phloem. The xylem is dead transport tissue. This moves the water around. The phloem is alive tissue, and this transports the food around the cells. Okay, we're on to the animals now. Nice. So the animals are everywhere, and there's at least 2 million of them alive today. So animals are multicellular and heterotrophic. What does heterotrophic mean? They feed on other organisms. They differ from the members of other 4 kingdoms in that they exhibit locomotion, so they can move. Also, they have got no cell walls, like plants do. And they've got a nervous system to sense their surroundings. There's 33 different phyla, but we're going to have a look at some of the main ones. Okay, the first one we're going to look at are the sponges. The sponges, these are the most simplest of invertebrates. The young ones can actually move around, and the adults are permanently attached to structures on the sea bed. They are hollow, and they filter feed through their body cavity, which is connected to the external environment through pores. Look at this thing. This is called a sea anemone, and these are in the phylum Coelenterata, or the ciliates. So these include some exceptionally beautiful creatures, but also some poisonous things like jellyfish. So jellyfish, coral all belong in this phylum. They've got soft bodies with a ring of tentacles and stinging cells as well, which they use for capturing prey. They've got one opening in the center, and these tentacles catch stuff and then will bring it towards that central hole where it feeds. Very cool animals. They've also got something called radial symmetry, so meaning that it is the same on many different planes of axes. If you were to cut it, looking at it, you've got the same either side. Okay, next one is the flatworms. And there's all sorts of incredible looking flatworms in the world. Some of these very vibrant, and a lot of them are very, very small. Some of the smallest ones are as small as 1 millimeter. Some of them grow up to about 30 centimeters. They've got a front end here where they've got a little mouth, and they've also got the sense organs for basically figuring out what is happening in the world. They've got this flattened mouth, flattened body, and they actually use diffusion for everything, coming in and also out. So they don't even have an anus. So these are the flatworms, Platyhelminthes, flattened bodies, no body cavity in there. That's really important to recognize about these. because they've got diffusion, which they rely on for everything. And they're hermaphrodites too, so they possess both male and female. Roundworms are thought to be the most numerous animals in the world. It's been estimated there's about 5 billion of them just in the top 7 centimeters of an acre of soil. That's incredible. They are found in almost every environment in the world, from the deepest oceans to the Antarctic. These animals have narrow, thread-like bodies which are pointed at both ends and bilaterally symmetrical. Many of them are parasites. The annelids are segmented worms. You can see they've got segments here, different to the others that we have looked at. You can start to see that things are getting categorized based on a lot of these physical characteristics. They've got these bristle-like structures called chordate that help them move. So segmented, they've got a closed blood circulatory system. The others do not. They're often found in moist soil and water, and they're free-living. The common earthworm is an example of one. Molluscs, my favorite. They live in all sorts of environments, generally in the ocean. Octopus and squid are examples of them. They've got really well-developed brains. They're very, very smart. They may have shells or no shells. So octopus do not have shells. This one is using a shell for protection. And they are categorized as having a soft, muscular foot with a soft body. And their bodies which are divided into a head, foot, and also a visceral mass. They are not segmented. They breathe through gills. And some other mollusks include slugs and snails, like the giant East African land snail. And the marine mussel as well is also a mollusk. Very, very diverse. Time for another activity. 5.13, you're going to be looking at annelids. And here is a video that shows a little bit about the anatomy of annelids. Activity 5.14, you guys are going to be looking at mollusks, looking at the body structure. Here is another video that's going to help go into this in a little bit more detail. Another phylum that I particularly like is the echinoderms. So this involves things like sea stars, sea urchins, brittle stars, and also feather stars. They are incredible. They have got spiky skin. Echino means spiky, and derm means skin. All of these have got spiky skin, some more than others. They've got these things called tube feet, so they can move around. And let me go back a little bit here. Sorry about that. And some of the most common ones are sea cucumbers that are all throughout lots of oceans around the world. Next phylum we're going to look at is Arthropoda. This comes from the Greek arthron, joint, and pados, foot. So these have got joint foots. They're generally pretty small. They've got an exoskeleton, a hard shell around the outside. And these arthropods are actually divided into a number of classes, including all of these. And insects, they live almost everywhere, although most are land-based. The crustaceans are mainly aquatic. I'll just see if we've got... I'll just talk about these a little bit. Bear with me. Crustaceans, yes, they're mainly found in the ocean, and they can be like crabs, prawns, shrimps, that sort of thing. You've got here the arachnida. Of course, these are the spiders. Most are terrestrial, but there's also some ocean ones. We've got here the diplopoda as well. So the diplopoda are something that have got diplopoda, 2 legs, and chilopoda as well. Okay, arachnids. These are, of course, the spiders. Diplopoda, millipedes, and Chilopoda are centipedes. Okay, this is something that you guys need to know. So these are chilopods, types of centipedes. These two are often confused with each other. Actually, some scientists even put them all in one group for a while. And they've just got long bodies with segments, but it's there is a table which summarizes the differences between the two on page 189 of your textbook. Here's a video which talks about insects and arthropods. All right, time for another activity, 5.15, collecting and examining arthropods. This lady has been collecting insects for a long time, and she talks about the tools and supplies needed for her work. Chordata, a term used, chordata is a term used for these flexible rod-like structures, which are known as the nonochords, and they run along the dorsal, the back side of the body, which provides support for these organisms. And chordates, they generally have got these three main structures: a hollow nerve cord, gill slits during their early development, and also a hollow nerve, and also, yes, this flexible rod-like structure here, which is the notochord. Okay, so there's a few things that create this phylum. Now onto the vertebrates. These are things that are maybe a little bit more familiar to you. They make up more than 99.9% of all of the animals on Earth today. However, if you ask people to name 10 animals, for example, most of them would actually choose 10 from the remaining 0.1%. The chordates, best known as the vertebrates. Okay, I may have made a little bit of an error here. The invertebrates make up more than 99% of the animals. It's the vertebrates that make up this 0.01%. So when you'd ask someone to name an animal, most likely they're going to be choosing a vertebrate, even though the inverts make up a lot of it. Hopefully that's clear now. So the vertebrates have got a backbone, an internal skeleton, not an exoskeleton, a closed circulatory system, a well-developed nervous system, and 2 pairs of limbs. All of them have got these characteristics. They also have kidneys, which they use as excretory organs. Pisces, these are your fish. So I'm going to be talking about the different types of vertebrates that are, there's many, but I'm going to talk about a few in a bit of detail. There's actually 5 classes within this, so we're making our way down that classification level. So fish, here's a table that summarizes the differences between bony fish and cartilaginous fish. So these are generally what are known as the sharks and rays, whereas bony fish are not what you generally consider fish. They've got streamlined bodies, a lateral line, which they use for sensing the environment, and they use it for hearing. And most fish have got a dark side on their back and also a light side on the bottom. They're ectothermic, so they rely on the heat from their environment to regulate their body temperature. And of course, fish are really important for people throughout the world, as we rely on them as a major food source. These are the 2 different groups, bony fish and cartilaginous fish. And I'm not going to go through this table here, but please make sure that you know those differences. Amphipods, these are things like frogs, toads, newts, and salamanders. This word amphibian actually comes from 2 Greek words. Amphi, meaning both, and bios, meaning life. So they spend part of their lives in the water and part on land. Amphibians were the first vertebrates, those with a backbone, that colonized land. And they've got these. Another class we're going to go into briefly is reptiles. So these are mainly found on land, although you do have some in the ocean, like turtles, for example, are reptiles. And there's a few characteristics that define them. They've got scales or dry skin. They have gas exchange in the lungs, so they breathe air. Think about a turtle as well, he starts to come up to breathe. And they lay eggs. So a few of the common ones that you would think about is the crocodile, the Nile crocodile. Lizards as well. Think about the East African spiny-tailed lizard. Also a reptile. Aves, these are the birds. They've got feathers, of course, over most of their body. And the forelimbs are adapted to make wings, which birds use to fly, of course. Most birds, that is. The sternum or breastbone has been enlarged into a big keel shape for the attachment of those powerful wing muscles, particularly in those birds that fly. They've got light skeletons, which means that it's easy for them to move around. They're also endothermic. So remember, that means that their heat, they use heat that's produced by their own metabolism to regulate their body temperature. One of the main features is that these guys have got a hollow nerve cord, but that only remains in the adult bird. Okay? And the last one we're going to look at, last class that we're going to look at here, is the mammals. So mammals are, of course, the best known of all animals, and they differ from other chordates in a number of ways. A true mammal produces milk for its young. It also has got hair on the skin and external ears, and generally maintains a very high internal body temperature. It also will produce live young, although there are some exceptions, and they do this by developing over time within the body in the structure called the uterus. Just like the birds, chordates features are only plainly visible within the embryos, and there's actually some subdivisions within mammals, such as the egg-laying mammals, for example, the platypus, marsupials, which are found where I'm from in Australia, and these are things like kangaroos, the koala bear, and they produce really immature young, so they're not really fully developed yet, but there is a pouch, so they can live in those. And they are higher mammals. Higher mammals is another subclass within there, where they've got fully developed young, which are nourished by milk, and they've got glands. And some of these examples are rats, cows, elephants, monkeys, and also humans. We are higher mammals. Okay, it's time for a few key terms. Wings we spoke about, the class Avum, the birds have got wings, and they are the forelimbs of birds that are adapted for flying. Ectothermic, we mentioned this a few times. This is creatures who use their own heat produced by their own metabolism to regulate their body temperature. Mammals can be defined as creatures who produce milk for their young and regulate their own body temperature. Okay, we got through this quite long section, so well done. What we've learnt in this is that there's the 5 kingdom classification system of the living world, and there's characteristic features of the kingdom Monera and examples of typical monerans, the bacteria, no nucleus, all of that sort of stuff. The protists, these have got the nucleus, and there's many different types, and we went through a few. Characteristics of fungi, so they can't photosynthesize, and they're important decomposers. And we also then looked into divisions of the kingdom plants, and we need to be able to remember a few different examples of each of those. Then further division of angiosperms is that they're divided into monocots and also dicots, and you need to be able to recognize each different type of those and characteristics of each of those really interesting types of animals that we went through. I'm not going to go through each one here, but remember we talked about different examples of each of those and why are they categorized in that group? What makes them stand out and are different to each other? And finally, the characteristic features of the main classes of the phylums of fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, and once again explain why they are unique and a few examples. Excellent work.
External and internal anatomy of a bony fish. All marine biologists must be knowledgeable about fish anatomy. Study the position, size, and arrangement of fins on your specimen. Cut your fish open as shown. Always make shallow cuts to avoid damaging the internal organs. After you open up your fish, there may be a lot of light-colored fatty tissue surrounding the more colorful internal organs. Carefully remove the fat to clearly reveal the organs. Use a blunt probe to separate the organs while maintaining their connections to each other. Do not cut or remove anything until you are instructed to do so. To find the stomach, gently insert the end of a probe through the mouth and down the esophagus.
Classification of living things. What do a worm, a cat, a fish, a bear, a lion, a tiger, a deer, and a tree have in common? They are all living things. With so many living things in the world, scientists have created a way to organize life into groups and give them names that are recognized worldwide. So if you ever find yourself in China at a zoo looking to see the lions, and there is nobody there speaking your language, what are you supposed to do to ask to see the lions? Scientific classification's grouping of organisms can help you determine a lion's scientific name. From general to specific, the levels of classification are kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. A lion belongs to the kingdom Animalia, a group that includes all animals. So in our group of organisms, the tree would not fit into this grouping. The phylum that the lion fits into is called Chordate. This is a group that includes everything with a backbone. The worm would be eliminated from our group because of its lack of a backbone. Class is the name of the next level of classification. The class that the lion belongs to is called Mammalia. Scientists use Greek or Latin words for the levels because they are understood everywhere. Mammalia means mammal, or animals with hair or fur. The fish is removed from our group because it's not a mammal. Order is the name of the next level, and the order a lion belongs to is called Carnivora, which means meat-eating. The deer is not a member of this order, and he is removed. Next, we have family. A lion is in the Felidae family. Members of this family have retractable claws, so the bear is removed. Then we have a level called genus. A lion is in the genus Panthera, which means roaring cat. The house cat does not roar, so it is removed. Finally, we have the level called species. Members of the same species can breed and produce offspring. A lion is in the species Leo. So the tiger is removed from this group. So a lion is an animal with a backbone that has hair or fur, eats meat, has retractable claws, can roar, and goes by the name Leo. The lion's scientific name is Panthera leo. Scientific names are an organism's genus followed by its species. So a lion is Panthera leo. So if you ever find yourself looking for lions at a zoo in China and nobody there is speaking your language, all you need to do is ask to see the Panthera leo, and you will be sure to see the lions. Classification of living things.
These are the review questions for Unit 5, Classification. And please remember, once the question has been read out, to pause and take a moment to record your answer, and you can hit resume and press play to reveal the answer after that. Okay, let's get into it. Question 1. A grade 9 student collected some animals from a forest ecosystem and classified all of them as vertebrates. Which of the following features were used by the student to group the organisms as vertebrates? The A. Absence of kidney as an excretory organ. B. Presence of an exoskeleton. C. The presence of open circulatory system. Or D. Absence of reproductive structures. And the correct answer is B, the presence of an endoskeleton. Question 2. Animals in the phylum Chordate have A. Pulmonary artery supplies oxygenated blood to the stomach. B. Hepatic arteries supply oxygenated blood to the kidneys. C. Coronary artery supplies oxygenated blood to the heart. Or D. Renal artery supplies oxygenated blood to the liver. And the correct answer is C. The muscular walls of the heart are supplied with blood by the coronary arteries, so that they have a constant supply of glucose and oxygen, and carbon dioxide produced is not allowed to build up in the tissue. Question 3. According to the system of Linnaeus, nomenclature, species name is written in A. Capital letter, B. Abbreviation, C. Local language, or D. Small letter. And the correct answer is D, small letter. So there's a few things that you need to remember, but the first name, the genus name, always has a capital. The second one starts with a small letter, and if it's handwritten, it should be italicized or underlined if handwritten or italicized when printed. Question 4. So this item's based on the following table. Shows classification of different groups of organisms. Take a look at this table. So which one is correct? It's A, 3, B, 4, C, 1, or D, 2. And the correct answer is C, 1. And you can have a look here and you can see the correct table. Question 5. This item is based on the following group of organisms: Mammalia, Amphibia, Crustacea, Arachnida, Pisces, and Insecta. Which of the following group of organisms are classified under the phylum Arthropoda? Is it A, 2, 3, and 5, B, 1, 3, and 4, C, 1, 4, and 6, or D, 3, 4, and 6? And the correct answer is D,